Let's, though, talk about something else making the headlines. And I think this is a complex issue too. It affects an awful lot of people. Not a single politician hasn't said that the last election was, and the media went along with it, was about the economy, about the cost of living crisis, about interest rates, about houses. But clearly we are going to get a change of government, the details of which are kind of being negotiated at the moment, and we wait for the final election results on Friday. But has that change meant that our economic woes are over, and what is happening in our economy, in our housing market? Well, a guy who keeps an amazingly close eye, an expert eye on this, is Cameron Bagrie from Bagrie Economics, and he joins us on the phone now. Cameron, been a while, mate. Nice to talk to you. How are you?
Yeah, good. Just relaxing, doing a little bit of work up in Auckland, hoping for some decent weather so I can get out in the kayak because it's just been great.
All right, and we're in a kind of phony war situation now. We've got a caretaker government, and all the players in the new government are just waiting to see finally what cards everyone has been dealt. Cameron, has the election had an impact on our economy since the 14th?
Yeah, we saw some business confidence numbers out of the ANZ yesterday. We've just seen business confidence rocket back up into positive territory. Yeah, and what we tend to see, Sean, is across the election or the government cycle, we tend to see business confidence is a lot more positive under a blue hui as opposed to a red one. There's just a statistical bias there. Is business confidence as a survey measure a good economic indicator? The answer is no. The business confidence surveys that have a lot more than business confidence questions are actually really good lead indicators on where we're going.
Right.
But there's certainly a bit of hope out there that we're going to see a bit of change, and the economy's performed pretty well over the past few years. We're going to get some unemployment rate numbers today that are still pretty low. Yeah, but if you look at, I guess, the structural side of the equation, the current account deficit, GDP per capita, population adjusted is negative. We've got a real inflation problem out there. You talk about the biggest issue being the cost of living. Well, the second biggest issue for New Zealanders is crime, law and order. It ranks above healthcare, which is saying something. The quality of infrastructure across New Zealand is really poor. So there's a lot of work to be done.
So a change of government isn't a universal panacea for our economic woes, is it?
No, it's not. And I guess if you look at what we saw within the election, there was a fair bit of what can only be described as populism-driven policy as opposed to real substance over the real hard issues or challenges that New Zealand faces going forward. And just look at the new government. They came in on a mandate of providing tax relief. Now, as tax relief, does that need to be near the top at the top of the pile in regard to what New Zealand needs to implement over the next sort of 6 to 12 months? I wouldn't put it there, but certainly that was at the top of the pile in regard to what they were putting on the table.
All right, what's the housing market doing? And I see interest rates are still stubbornly high, and the banks aren't being particularly bullish about getting them down any time in the near future, Cameron.
No, they're not. Look, and if you look at what we've seen over the past 2 to 3 months, Sean, particularly, is that interest rate markets, both in New Zealand and around the globe, have sort of gravitated towards this what's called higher for longer. Why are they doing that? They've been doing that because, by and large, we're still seeing reasonable news out of the global economy, out of the New Zealand economy, which is a good thing. The problem is that it's not a good thing when you want to get inflation down. When you want to get inflation down, you've got to curb growth. And what we're seeing is remarkable resilience, including across the housing market, in response to growth. So interest rate markets are now starting to say, look, central banks have got a little bit more work to do, not necessarily by lifting interest rates any further, but pushing out expectations that interest rates could be coming down anytime soon because inflation is proving sticky, it's stubborn. That just means you need to go through a little bit more of what we call a deferred state of achievement for the economy.
Yeah, okay. Cameron, and this is classic of an election. Oh, look, vote for us, good times will roll. Then you get look, it's a lot worse than we thought. We're just going to have to wait a while. The other thing that's happening, particularly with the housing market, is expectation of changes to the Bright Line test, the rollback of some of what were perceived to be anti-landlord measures that Labor brought in. Doesn't this mean that demand in the housing market is going to go up again? The poor old first home buyer, higher interest rates for longer, and in a much more competitive market again?
Yeah, so if you look at what's going on across the housing market at the moment, there's certainly a little bit of excitement or hope that the incoming government is going to be a bit more friendly towards property purchases, particularly your landlords et al. Is it going to be a magic sort of potion that they're going to deliver, which is suddenly going to make the economics of property investing look an awful lot better at the margin? But the key variable here is interest rates, sure. And interest rates have moved up a long way, and there's a lot of people, there's 170 billion worth of mortgages, including investor mortgages, to refinance in the next 12 months, and interest rates are all up around 7% on a good day. You know, the yields you can get on residential property are a long way away from 7% in most parts of New Zealand. But of course, what we're also seeing across the property market, it's not just a function of the ability to borrow or the cost of borrowing, it's also a function of demand, and a lot of that demand is driven by migration. And what tends to take place within politics is that when you've got an economy that's sort of stumbling a little bit, it's pretty convenient to reach for the convenient lever, and that convenient lever is just to bring more people into the country. And you get economic growth, but the problem with getting economic growth is that you've got to fund the cost of that growth on the other side, your infrastructure, your housing, funding the healthcare, roading and that sort of stuff. And that's historically what we haven't done. We've taken the dividend from migration driving growth, but we haven't paid the piper in regard to supporting